And when it came to the conference of the Bolsheviks in June, there was a resolution there from the army people saying, we don't need a conference anymore, what we need to organize here is the uprising. Now it is so different than the picture that she's giving you, there was a party leader there, he said, now retreat, now advance, now go with arms, now without arms. This is a lot of rubbish. And why is it important, this honest picture? I think it is an honest picture. It is terribly important because unless you understand really what Leninism is all about, and the interrelation between the party and the class, the question of learning from the class, that the source of all inspiration in the final analysis is the class, and not everybody else. That the Soviets were established in Russia by the class, and not by the party. In 1905, the workers started Soviets. What was the Petrograd Bolsheviks' reaction? They said, we'll come to the Soviet and put an ultimatum. Either you accept our program, or we are leaving you. We are for dissolving you. We can't dissolve you because perhaps you understand. But we put the ultimatum, you accept it or leave it. Lenin's reaction was completely different. At the beginning he said, perhaps they are wrong about having a Soviet. But when he saw the Soviet, he said, what a source of inspiration, what a source of self-organization, what a source of a really future form of power. And that's why it is terribly important to understand. I'm sorry that so much things is not glorifying Lenin by simply telling you that Lenin was a human being, and that we have to deal with a really human material, with real problems of life. The truth of the matter is Lenin was a military commander, that everybody said, yes sir, yes sir. There's nothing grand about that. Any tyrant can do it. On the contrary, the great thing about Lenin that he had to deal with this uneven level of consciousness, with conflicts inside the party, inside the class, a reflection of different level of consciousness, and so on and so on. Yes. Now, therefore, from the assumption that the working class is the center of the arena, comes the second assumption of Lenin, is the working class is the center of the arena, then the relation between the party of the class is always dialectical relations, in which a party learns from the class, in which a party talks to the class, in which there is a process of dialogue all the time. And from that comes, of course, the question of the inner democracy inside the party. Because if you talk to the class and the class talks back, it cannot express itself unless there is internal democracy. Because not everybody has the same ears. And therefore, there are 200,000 members in the party, and they are listening to 2 million workers speaking. Of necessity, they'll hear different voices. And if they hear different voices, you cannot have anything but a inner democracy to express the real interest of those, or the real feeling of those 2 million workers. Now the trouble, what I said up to now, that many comments will say, that's very interesting, but what you say really about Lenin, that he was a fantastically good man in terms of listening. He was able to listen. In other words, he's a very good, practical, revolutionary tactician. Is that all? The answer is, that's not all. He couldn't have listened so well unless he had a fantastic, good, basic, theoretical grounding. You see, because the problem for Lenin was this. He was away for 15 years in Geneva, in London, in God knows what, in Austria, all over the place, in Paris. Now, how can a man like that, over 15 years, keep his ear to the ground? It is really not true that he listened to many people. He didn't have the opportunity to listen to many people. So how really did he manage? When I speak about dialogue with the class, how the hell did he manage to keep the dialogue with the class? And he did manage. There's no question about it. In every stage of Lenin, you can find how marvelous he understands this specific situation. Now, how did he do it? And I believe the central thing about Lenin is simply because he was a very good Marxist. He understood that as a good Marxist, you have to have 2 points of departure. One of them is the principle of your program that are based on a real, honest, Marxist, objective analysis of the real world, of the real material world, from which you decide what are the potentialities of the working class. This is the first thing. The potentialities of the working class depend on the objective real world. And therefore Lenin loved statistics. He loved statistics because the real world was the thing that he wanted to really know about. Then he knew another thing, that what man does depends not on the material world, but on the matter here, the grain matter here. And this is the second point of departure in any tactical issue. And because he connected those general, clear principles, and at the same time he knew that the point of departure is the grain matter of the working class, and because he never believed in substitution, in other words, in cheating, in playing in concepts by thinking about the working class in the abstract, instead of thinking about the working class as they are. The working class as they face problems and struggles, etc. Because of it, in every situation, the strategic decision of Lenin was basically correct. Lenin always said, when you look at a long, long link, a long chain with lots and lots of links, you have always to look to the key link in order to pull. Now, it is absolutely true that Lenin always looked to the key link and he pulled at it. Because he looked at the key link, quite often the other links didn't fit really very well. He didn't care very much. They were subordinate. They were of secondary importance. That's why you can find a book of Lenin on the development of capitalism in Russia of nearly 600 pages, beautifully argues, very well analyzed, that the foreign capital invested in Russia is not mentioned. And you say to yourself, I don't understand. Didn't Lenin know that half investments in Russia or so were foreign capital? Why the hell didn't you notice it? The answer, who the hell cares? What is the issue on the order of the day? The issue on the order of the day, the key problem in Russia in 1896, 97, 98 was a very central issue. Is the working class on the central arena or not? Are we, the Marxists, right against the Narodniks? If we are right against the Narodniks, the important thing is to prove to the Russian workers in Russia that the capitalism is developing in Russia, and therefore Lenin brings more facts and more facts and more facts, and when you read those 600 pages, at the end of the day, say, Lenin must be right, because to read it again, to find he was wrong, it is too much. You see now, it is he really convinces you. But when you come foreign capital, what's the relevance here? It is not special relevance to the problem. And that's why when Lenin says always when you pull, he refers many times when there is the chain, you look at the link and you pull at it. Because you always looked at the link to pull at it, you find quite often he didn't pay attention to the secondary thing. And therefore when people start analyzing Lenin's tactical mistakes, so to say, the tactical mistakes that Lenin made many, many of them. I'll tell you straight, if you're in doubt, I'll prove it to you, many of them, but basically they were on a very good assumption. The basic assumption was this, which is the link and what is necessity. For example, in 1917, from July onwards, the central thing for Lenin was a very simple, and from August onwards, the central thing is we can't postpone the revolution. The revolution is now or never. A day can cost us 10 years. We must make the revolution, and uprising is necessary. This is the thing that he hammers again and again and again. Now, when he hammers those ideas again and again and again, he makes a fantastic number of tactical errors. For example, he writes to Smilga and says, Smilga, you are in control of the troops in Finland. What about moving the troops from Finland and taking Petrograd? Now you know the truth. As a good disciplined party member, you should have written to the Central Committee and said, Smilga is only a subordinate member. After all, he's not the Central Committee. He's only a member of the party. What do you mean, mobilize the troops of Finland, marching them on Leningrad, on Petrograd? It's ridiculous. But Lenin, the Central Assembly was correct. The central assumption, we must have an uprising here and now. Again, he says, we must go to Moscow. Uprising, let's start in Moscow. Tactically, there's no question, Trotsky was right. History proved it. It took 10 days in Petrograd to take power on the 25th of October, or 7th of November. Only 10 people died. In Moscow, after the Petrograd Revolution, it took thousands of deaths in order to take power. Trotsky was right on the tactical issue. But the funny thing is this need of pressing the stick in one direction, over-pressing, emphasize the question of which is the link that you are pulling. This is really central to Lenin. And you know why it is central to Lenin? Because unless you look to the core, you can lose yourself in a whole number of particulars that by themselves are quite important, but are still particular of secondary importance. And you see, that's why when you look at Lenin as a strategist, and nobody can understand, I believe, Lenin unless you look at it in terms of strategy and tactics. I mean, Marx didn't belong to the First International. Marx would have been still Marx. The Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital would have guaranteed it. If Marx, for one reason or another, in 64, had to emigrate to the United States, and he wasn't involved in the First International, Marx would have been still Marx, because the main thing of the 19th century was to build the foundation of scientific socialism. On the other hand, Lenin, all his books like Development of Capitalism in Russia and so on, were banned for one reason or another. Lenin would have still been Lenin, because the central thing about Lenin is he translated this in terms of the real struggle in a real world, in a real Russian society at the time. And therefore you can understand Lenin only really when you analyze very, very carefully his tactics and strategy and so on. Now,